Hey, Slackers, thank you for joining us on another Late for Practice, the show we introduce and interview your favorite rugby professionals. I'm joined by USA Eagle, Utah Selects head coach, and two-time MLR champion, Olivier Ali Kilifi. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Great.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah.
Is your show, man. It's about you, but I definitely have some questions that I want to ask and like see kind of go through your history of rugby. I'm
Yeah.
very interested in like where you got started because I know that you played in high school in Seattle.
Yeah, no, so I grew up in Seattle, so at the time I think I was like around 13. I grew up kind of in a rough neighborhood, sort of like in the White Center area, if you're like Burien, and then South Seattle, kind of towards West Seattle too. But yeah, like it started, I've always been around rugby. I've always heard about it. Obviously my my background's Polynesian, so I've always heard about rugby. My dad played and all my uncles, but like I didn't personally play until I was probably 13. And it all started with there's a couple of the older guys just trying to keep the kids out of the streets and which is kind of like a natural thing that happened around where I grew up. Kids just started getting into street life and stuff. So they created a team with our local boys and girls club, and that's kind of how I got started. Just started practicing with them, start playing, and then afterwards I just fell in love with it. So Seattle's a pretty rich rugby city too, so there was constant competition with, like, I think at the time was like Super Rugby, because they had old Puget Sound Beach. They had a Seattle club that played up in Canada. So there was tons of rugby here and tons of clubs and stuff. So um I think the environment sort of breeded my interest as well. And also sort of piqued my I guess my interest in trying to chase it. So growing up.
You spoke about like how there was a lot of competition there already. Is that kind of like the secret of why why the Seawolves stayed really relevant?
Yeah, I guess so, because just because of, like, obviously Canada's here on our border. We always we play in that league. So yeah, when MLR first started, I mean, at the that's at the time, like, those first two championships from the Seawolves, like the team, we already existed. Like, we were already consistently playing. Um and then when the MLR started, it was just another competition to play in. So yeah, that first championship team, we most of that team was local boys. It was just all of us, and then we won it the first 2 years. And so I think, just because of, like, the consistency of playing, like, because at the end of the day, like, if just like every athlete, you have training, but nothing mimics a game. And so I find, like, sometimes in America, it's a big issue, is like our kids don't play much.
Mm.
MLR is sort of changing that a little bit, but, like, just kids constantly playing week in, week out. And I think that's what's lacking, and that's something that Seattle's had for years. With just especially with Seattle Club. I don't know if you know Kevin Flynn, but he's the manager, and he sort of kind of breeded the Seattle culture with rugby and stuff. So but yeah, no, I think that's you're dead on. They have that's a big part of, I think, the success here in Seattle. So um the communities around it, like the Seawolves is one of, like, they're like accepted by the city as, like, one of their city teams. So it's a good bit of support from the city. They're like fully in it. I know in Salt Lake, obviously you got the Warriors. But, like, imagine if the whole city there was just backing the Warriors, like downtown Salt Lake. And that's kind of what Seattle has already, which is good sporting city. So yeah.
In your opinion, like what is the most essential component to growing like that rugby for any city or just growing it here in North America?
When I was living here playing, I mean, we had so many players on my club team that that played for a national team. We had Lou Stanfield play up here. Myself, a lot of pretty big names. Ben Landry. You got Malone, Miula, Andrew Dortolo, Miles Craigwell, Kevin Swearin, like all from here playing, and so it kept the competition pretty high, but I think consistently playing is one of the things, and
Yeah.
then and I think second for me would also be because because anyone can say anything about growing the game, right? Everyone has their opinions. Some people think it's college, some people think club rugby, some people think it's the MLR, right? I mean, but I think it's a combination of things to grow the sport here, right? Because I think there's a place for everything, right? And that's the beauty about rugby. Like, some people don't want to play professionally, right? Like some professional is not something like maybe a social guy that wants to just play on the weekend and have a few beers. That guy doesn't want to play pro, and the guy that wants to chase it to the top, he probably doesn't want to play club rugby, right? Like he wants to probably get into academy, get into a pro team as soon as possible. So, um, but I think going back to that is kids actually understanding the culture of the sport too, like what what that looks like. Um, and I think also watching it more. You look at, growing up, I remember, a lot, I I'm old enough to remember like, like Michael Jordan, that whole era in the 90s and stuff, and you wonder why like kids in America, they're so good at basketball, so good at football, and it's because they watch these players, then they go outside and then play basketball for like 2, 3 hours, right? And then you got kids that want to play rugby, but they don't put in that same sort of, they don't actually watch rugby games. They don't actually like, you watch a lot, you talk to a lot of these kids, they're like, no, I never even watched a Super Rugby game, they don't watch people doing what they want to do at a high level, you know, um, consistently. So I always tell kids, man, you need to watch more rugby so you can understand like how things flow. And then when you see those pictures in real life, right? So when you're in a situation where you can kind of understand like what you're seeing, and you
Mm,
can kind of understand what's happening in front of your face. I mean, if you're someone that's like, let's say you never watched the NBA game, right? And then you go and play like a pickup game in the street or something, there's certain situations it's gonna be a little bit more easy to like kind of manipulate you. But
yeah.
if you're like a kid that's always watching basketball, you're watching these, you can see these pictures, right? They like unfold in front of you and you kind of recognize them early. And I just think more kids just need to be more educated with rugby, kind of watch it more, watch it at a higher level, watch it consistently.
And I think
So
MLR
I think
is a huge component of that. Like it's that missing puzzle piece where kids can actually like watch it, go to games, see it, be in the experience of it. Like that's a huge factor for a lot of kids now.
oh yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, there's when I was coming up, like Seattle Rugby Club was probably the only option, right? Like we played on weekends, blah blah blah. That's the highest level was probably making the national team, if you're
Mm,
like an American based player. But like you look at these kids now, like I mean, MLR exists now. So there's an avenue to go professional and do it for a living. You got college rugby, which is an avenue to get a free education, go to school, wherever now. Some colleges is full ride scholarships. Those things didn't exist when I was growing up. It was like you want to play rugby, just find a local club and beat each other up on the weekend. And but now kids can get an education, kids can make it a career now. Kids can, they have so many different options now with rugby, and and with the whole concussion stuff going on with football, and parents are looking for alternatives, right? And rugby's another alternative.
so you have six kids, and I know that at least two of them are in football right now, or not right now,
Yeah,
but they'll be in
yeah,
football.
yeah. So right now, my three of my kids are playing rugby. So rugby season is going on right now. So they mostly play. So my daughter's playing this year, so she's playing rugby this season, which is gonna be new for her, but you know, good challenge. But yeah, they play football. Then my two boys play football in the fall when it comes around. So
How do you balance your professional rugby career with like all the kids, all the hobbies, everything else that you want to do? Like how does that balance work for you, man?
um, I mean, it's obviously I don't. I mean, I don't take credit for nothing. Like my missus, she sort of balances everything. To be honest, like Um, I'll just leave that there. To be honest, like, because I mean that's really what it is. Like, I wouldn't be able to, you know, play and do what I gotta do, like if it wasn't for that side, So, I mean, that's just how it is, I don't want to, you know, take any sort of credit for anything. So, um, but no, it's good. It's a good balance. Just make sure that like I'm present when I'm present. Because these kind of careers, it's sort of it's easy to sort of check out. Like come home and then like not really be there. Like you're still thinking of like the next game or the recovery, or you're thinking about like because like to be an athlete is pretty 24 hours. That's what's hard to kind of explain to people sometimes, like because it's not, yeah, you have the game on Saturday, Sunday or whatever, but like then you travel the next day, then you got to try to get your body right for Monday session, and then you're hitting it full again on Tuesday. Like you're just like trashed, like. But so you just try to balance your recovery, try to balance um just how you use your time, so, and then it's pretty like 7 days a week, like so some people have days. We have a day off, but you know that day is like more for errands and stuff. But yeah, in season it's pretty like full week. So it's hard to get away. It's hard to like plan sometimes. And so when the bye weeks hit, that's when we just like disappear fully. Like we don't do nothing rugby. But I think it's important to check out because especially with long seasons, and like you can't really stay fully engaged all the time, and it's impossible, So you need little. It's important to just not think of rugby sometimes. Um. So yeah, I think it's just different. It's just anything you do for a living. It's sort of like, like so after trainings, some of my friends who don't like, they'll, hey, we're playing touch later, and I'm like, that's the last thing I want to do. That's like asking a plumber, or like a electrician who does that for a living. You're like, hey, you want to go and like just wire at home? Like, they're like, no, absolutely not. So like, so when I'm not doing rugby, I check out fully. I try to stay engaged with my family, my friends.
I have some coaching questions for you because you were given the keys as the Utah Selects head coach last year. You
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah, yeah.
how did that go down? Who came to you? Who talked to you? Who was like, you need to do this?
It's interesting because it was actually part of the contract. Like coming over to Utah was like that I play and then also help with the development stuff, which was cool with me. But a lot of it was through Brandon Sparks. It was like just because I did contract talks with him, and he was real big on me kind of transitioning into coaching and stuff. And so yeah, he kind of gave me that shot there with selects, and I loved it, man. The time I had there. So yeah, I was working through Brandon, created. I thought it was an awesome program. I don't know what's happening now with it, but hopefully they keep it going and make it an actual viable feeder program into what the Warriors have going on, which makes sense. The talent that's in Utah when it comes to rugby is, I mean, in the athletics is nuts. But in order to capture that talent, you got to be willing to invest in your development, be able to invest your time and money, into hopefully getting a return on that. So, but as far as my personal experience, I loved it. I loved working with all the athletes that I worked with. Some of them became real good friends of mine. But learned a lot about myself, to be honest, and more than anything about just the sort of the mindset you need to have as a coach, and sort of the balance of it, because it's pretty full on. It's like a 24-hour job, like being a coach, because like even when the game's done, you're already working on film, getting film ready for Monday. And then you're trying to highlight things from the game that we just played, but you're also looking and creating a game plan for the team coming up, and so it's almost like you almost have to live in the past. Let's review this, but we have to get over it quick so we can review the new teams, and then you're always, as a coach, you're always thinking of like what could be better, like what athletes go together, what like so it's constantly almost like taking up your whole day as a and so it was good. It's a good challenge, really good challenge that I enjoyed because um you really got to manage people, so you have to understand how to some people are combative, naturally. Some aren't. Some are a little bit more passive. How do we encourage this guy to be a little bit more enthusiastic? How do so you have different issues with different people, like you gotta, sort of solve. And I always find any sort of career that you have to actually work that close with people and kind of like work with behaviors, and it's rewarding, but it's also draining. It's a lot of work. So yeah, but it's good. It was really good. I enjoyed it. And hopefully they keep it going. Um, there in Utah. So
Is coaching something that you think that would be beneficial to you in your future as like a coach that you want to do?
I do enjoy coaching. And it's something I do like. I think as I especially becoming older, I'm sort of transitioning more into a teacher role. So it's like naturally, that's just what people naturally do, right? When you get older, you should start teaching. I don't know why, but like, you just start like instructing people about things. You just been around a long enough. You just become that guy. And so I don't mind. I don't mind coaching. It's I think it'll be really rewarding career to chase. Um, but I think I don't know what that looks like as far as like, you know, um, like a career here in the MLR, what that looks like, still gotta. We always had a funny saying growing up. I was like, I mean, if the money's right, we'll do it. Like it doesn't matter. So I mean, you got that factor too about your family, make sure things work out with you and your family and stuff. So, but yeah, it's definitely something I would chase. I think I think being part of like a coaching staff for a World Cup team or even is such a privilege, and working with the U18s here the last 3 years, just summer tour, you get that renewal of like representing your country, and so that kind of like revitalized my interest in coaching again. So it was because you do it with the selects, but then when you go and you're actually joining the USA coaching staff and you're working with U18s and you're prepping for like Germany or another country and you're watching film, and there's a it's just like another dynamic to it. So I think I've been lucky to have experiences where um everything's kind of a cumulative. It just kept on like, because at first I was like, oh, I'll just coach, and then here in Seattle, and that kind of was like, oh, that's fun. And then I worked with the select, so that kind of like piqued my interest a little more. So like the coaching thing kind of just have been dripped to me like slowly. But it wasn't
Mhm.
something where I was like, oh, I'm gonna coach after. To be honest, I was on the other side. Like I was like, when I'm done playing, I'm not coaching anything. Like
You're like, I'm
because
done.
when
I'm
you do it
out.
long enough, yeah, when you do it long enough, feel like it's it's almost like I don't know. I mean, I don't mind coaching like my kids and like their little like rugby team there, but like to try to be a pro coach or like go back to a club, and like it's difficult because um you just played it at a different level. So it's you really just gotta have that passion to want to coach too. Sometimes you can be a great athlete, but you can be such a different coach. And so, so I find that some of my best coaches that I've had were guys that weren't even like all stars. They were like sort of the guy on the team. Like they're and they have the most insight, as far as like because they didn't really excel physically on it. They've learned the actual game and they like can teach it, and so a lot of the best coaches I've had, they weren't even standout players. Some of them didn't even play pro.
It's hard for like a really high all-star player to go in and coach because they're like, "Well, just do this." Well, I physically can't do what you're doing, but somebody
Yeah,
that's not as gifted can go, "Oh, this is how you have to work around that kind of
yeah,
issue."
yeah.
That's an interesting perspective. That's really, yeah. I like that. I dig that. So having said that, what are some non-negotiables for an Alivi Kalifi team?
I mean, I think two big ones right off the bat. Obviously, like fitness, right? Like fitness is a big thing. Just players like because it's funner, right? The game is funner if you're like a lot fitter. I know it's kind of weird to hear it from me, like as a prop, right? But like fit enough to like actually play it at a level where you can like you know actually see your full potential come to fruition. Um, I mean. I know how it is, right? When you're playing a game, you're not fit. You're like, freak, when am I coming out? Like so you're not enjoying the game, right? You're not actually like you're worried more about like trying to get off the field than like try to actually like create value for your team. And so I think obviously that second, because we play a contact sport, most of the guys that I talk to, like aggression is like that's non-negotiable. You need to be aggressive right away. Some guys play rugby, they're not like aggressive. And then just third is like being an actual student, like being a student of the game, actually learning, right? Because a lot of people like play rugby, but they don't understand how what they're doing can impact what's going on out wide, or or what happens here in the middle, like dictates what goes on there. Everything there's a knock on effect on everything you do on the pitch. And sometimes we do a move three phases ago, but that whole point was just to open this up, or was to open this up, or and so just actually learning, yes, like understand your role, but what your role actually plays out in the whole team perspective, right? So like when I'm coaching younger guys, they're especially younger athletes, right? You want to prove yourself. You want to, instead of making the extra pass, you want to do sides that like um instead of being students, they just want to like kind of show their highlights type of things. And so instead of putting a guy away, they rather like run someone over, right? Like things like that. So looking at, like just looking at certain situations, like was that did that really serve the team, right? Like what was that was a good alternative, but like what is another what's another alternative we could have done here? So just allowing them to like problem solve on their own.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, just those are a few. Um, but then just just helping them understand that like everything connects, like because the thing with Select is very diverse, different people from different cultures and like how they do things. And like for example, like you look at all these guys, they get fined for being late to meetings, things like that. But like, there's a reason why that happens on rugby teams is because we all believe that things connect. So if you're late to a meeting, you might be late to a ruck, you might be late to um getting in position on time. Like it all connects, right? Like how you do something, how you do one thing is how you do usually everything, right? Is what they say. So working with selects, it was pretty tough because a lot of them um there's that discipline sometimes lacks, and so those are kind of things that I sort of expect from them. Like, hey, look, if it says 7, I know in the Tongan, like that's like 8 o'clock, like, but like no, these are like hard numbers. Like 7 o'clock, be there on time. Like, I can't select you if you're not. So I put a big emphasis on like how people show up too, like how they come to training. Like, um, I was always taught that like training doesn't start, when the whistle and the coach brings you in. It starts when you pull up into that driveway, when you pull up into that parking lot. Like that's when you have to start zoning in and start thinking about training. And but yeah, it's yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I mean,
When you talk about your training, what are some of the things that you expect guys to be able to do as they come in to be part of your team to start like playing for you?
um, I don't know if there's like one certain thing. Sometimes because a lot of it is just seeing who I have like on the team, like how how can we utilize these players like abilities and skills, and who can best fit those roles. And so sometimes the first couple of training sessions would just be seeing who I have athlete wise, right? Like what kind of players do we have? Do we have because you can kind of pick up on what the vibe of the group is, if it's like a really excited group or if it's a group that's kind of like, oh, we may need we need to inject a little bit more energy in this group, or something like that, so just finding out who I have and then just making it clear like what the expectations is for the season, So, fortunately, coaching the selects, I didn't lose one game, we won every single game, and I know that a lot of it was with club guys and club teams and stuff, but like, I mean, it's a good experience for the players, to be able to feel what a successful season feels like and build on that, So, but yeah, I just think, yeah, I expect them to understand like this is what we need. This is the system that we're running, and we just need precision, across the board. I don't care for things to go like 1,000%, like at training. We're looking like more for precision and just execution, And so those are big things that I try to harp on, and because that all connects with everything. You can't execute if you don't know your roles, right? You don't know your roles if you don't study, watch film, things like that. So I just think there just needs to be a little bit more development around American players. I don't know. I just think it will just help with our national team and filter them up. Um, nothing against foreigners. I just think in order to be sustainable, we need more American eligible athletes that can perform right, like at a high level. And so real big on like trying to create something around type fives. I personally just if ideal world, I would probably just prefer to work with type five, and just develop like a factory of front rows, because I feel like that's a big issue with especially around American eligible front rowers. Um, I know in America like props are sort of looked at as like a secondary position, but it's 'cause everybody wants to be a flanker, everyone's playing the wing, right? Like, and then props is like all of a sudden they get to high school and like, oh, I'm like a big guy. I have to play prop now, So, but I want to create like sort of a buzz around like it's okay to be a front rower early, like in your and actually learn that position, and it's first off, it's the highest paid position in world rugby, like front
Mm.
rowers. So, so I mean, they can make a good life out of it, but then also having that love to be one, no one would love to be a pro. I mean, until you actually play prop, like, and you're like, it's actually okay, I'm a full on prop, and you buy into it, like, then you start loving the position. But like, if you talk to like a little 10-year-old right now, and you're like, oh, you want to be a prop? They're like, no, why would I want to be a prop? So I mean,
I want to get the
once you
ball. I
start
want to
getting,
run.
yeah, like they all want to be wingers, and which makes sense, right? But you get enough kids that like like, hey, yeah, no, I don't mind learning prop at an early age. Those are the kids you're gonna see like actually dominate once they start getting like 19, and so just kind of putting more of like love around that position. Maybe I don't know, like some kids they find it difficult to play prop, which is I get it, it's a tough
Yeah.
position. So
Well, it's the same problem I think that American football has with linemen. Like that, if you're not a great lineman, no one else on the team is going to do well. And,
yeah,
a prop is the person that sets the tone. You're not going to push us around. You're not going to be able to go up the middle.
yeah,
We're going to be here, and you're going to have to get past us. Yeah,
yeah,
I think that more people need to give those positions the credit that they
yeah,
deserve because they're a high value commodity. But then at the same time, they're just not the flashy roles. They're the guys that come to work
yeah,
every day and do the job.
yeah, exactly right. But like yeah, so if we're sticking to that, right? Like so you think about it like you look at like American football, right? You already have kids that want to be linemen, Like they're going to
Yeah.
lineman camps. They're like at a young age. They're like 12 and they're doing like rushing camps and like you don't so you're never gonna have like you already have kids that love that position already, right? Like they're already like I've made the decision early like 9 years old, and that I want to try to be a DN, and they'll like love it and train it and like pay for extra camps and like, but until we get to that point about like front rows and stuff, like, it's hopefully we have kids that want to be like, and they can get the time under it, right? Like learning how to actually be a good front rower. Um, and then usually by their later teens, they're like already ready to compete at a high level, ideally, hopefully, so
That's
um
that's the hope. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the hope.
that's the so yeah.
Well, I think a huge component of that is having people that you can look up to. I think that something that centers especially have today is like Jason Kelsey, guys like Jason Kelsey. I think that guys like you, guys like Paul Mullen or Chance Wadlowski, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these other guys that are in the league are gonna also like bring um that kind of respect and that kind of like looking up to. But I especially, as you guys play in the USA, the World Cups, doing those campaigns, or now the Pacific Cup, is that what they're calling it?
Pacific Nation Cup, yeah.
Yeah, the Pacific Nation Cup, which is really sweet.
Which only happened that because that currently exists already, but I think they're making it more consistent because it usually is like every 4 years, like the year of the World Cup, and USA will compete in it. But now it looks like it's going to be a consistent tournament, which is awesome.
I'm yeah, I'm way stoked for it to play against Tonga.
Oh yeah,
What was it? Tonga, Fiji, Japan, Samoa, I think is also
yeah,
one of the
yeah.
teams as well. So like, those six
Japan,
teams going up
uh,
every year.
yeah, yeah. So I think it just goes together with because they're talking about like a world league. It's like the top 10 teams are like playing against each other. So I think maybe this is sort of like a piggyback version of maybe like mini leagues they're creating throughout the world, So no, that would be awesome. Especially having Japan there and elevate that tournament for sure. So
Speaking of Japan, 2019, your second World Cup
oh, yeah,
campaign.
yeah. Yeah.
What was it like slipping the jersey back on for a second time?
To be honest, the second World Cup meant probably I mean the first one was cool, but like this one it meant a lot to me, Japan, because the fact that even making the World Cup, I didn't think I was gonna make the team because I just tore my Liz Frank. Um it was actually against Utah. I was here in Seattle that second year, the year we won it, and it was Saya Uhila that tackled me in at Zion's back. Like my foot felt funny, and I was like, oh, I don't know if it's my ankle. And then yeah, later I found out it was my Liz Frank, and I always give Saya crap about it too. I was like, bro, you almost took me out, bro. Like, and he's like, oh, like. No, I didn't. Like, man, don't make me feel bad. I'm like, bro, I almost missed the World Cup because of you, bro. And I just don't let him live it down. I just play with him, But yeah, I was coming off of Lit Frank. They said it was an 8 month uh recovery process. I came back in 6 months, like 5 months, right in time for preseason, for World Cup preseason. So like Japan was like a miracle for me, man, like to even make it. Yeah. Like I wasn't even ready and I still went. Yeah. But I was able to perform and it was, got through it. So but no, it was good. It was a good experience. It's always an honor to put on a jersey. Like no matter what team you play for, like there's nothing like an international game. I can't explain it. Like that feeling, I'll carry that for the rest of my life. Like what it is to be in like a foreign stadium, to wear like American colors, to take the field, and that feeling is for anybody, any national team you represented. It's such a different feeling. Um it's just a lot hard. You play a lot harder. You play um a lot more physical. You're a lot because you take the banner of your country and you're like, oh, I gotta play. Like it's no longer about like you just throw everything at it. And so international games are just like it's really a test because everyone's coming 100% at you like that whole game, and so it's always an honor to represent your country, especially for America. Like You know, regardless of like what people's thoughts are of like USA Rugby, like I love it. I'll never give it up for anything. Like that, those are like some of the major highlights in my sporting career was putting on that jersey and representing America. You know, and even just to do it with the players that I've been able to do it with that like my era, right? Like Blaine Scully, um, Matt Truville, like Lou Stanfield, Todd Clever, Andrew Sunila, like these are like legends of USA Rugby. So it's like, now that I'm towards the end of it, it's like thinking back of it, it's like I can't believe I played with some of those like guys, and you know, it's a it's a great privilege. I always keep it in the memory bank. So yeah.
Do you have a specific memory that like you really keen in on when you're talking about 2019, that
Um,
that World Cup?
yeah, I think there was a lot of them. So one obviously the England game, the first game, that was tough because I was coming off the bench, and everyone kind of knows this in the like USA Rugby, but like, yeah, unfortunately, David Onu'u, he got hurt like 30 seconds into the game, and so I was like not expecting it. I just got came to the bench for 30 just to sit down, and they're like, "Hey, you're in." So so I don't know if you've ever come off the bench, you sort of like the mindset is different, right? Because you're coming in as a closer, so you're thinking more like, okay, I might get like maybe 30 minutes or so. Let me just empty the tank, right? So like you're just looking to go 30 minutes as hard as you can or whatever, just go just empty everything. But then if you're thinking like that all week and then all of a sudden like you go in early, there's this mental like all of a sudden you're like, no, now I have to go like a full game, 80 minutes, And then to do
Hmm.
that in the World Cup against England, which is like, so I was like mentally, I was like, it's just a lot of prayers. I just been like a lot of prayers throughout the game. All right, just give me to this ref. All right, let me get this kick case. All right, yeah, all right, cool, cool. Let me get through the scrum. Like like just little mini prayers. Hey, that's just my career. And well,
I love it.
uh, no, but
Who
it was a great experience. Love it. I don't. I'll never exchange for anything else. I enjoyed it. Japan's an awesome country too, by the way. So,
who have you lined up against where you're thinking, oh man, that's a legend of the game? Like,
yeah, I mean, you got Dane Coles from Leicester Tigers. He was good. I mean, obviously, like Kyle Sinclair. Yeah, went against Kyle. Who else do we have? Yeah, it's quite a bit, eh? What's the name? Is it Owen Franks? One of the brothers, Owen Franks. Against the All Blacks. That was interesting. Really good experience. James Slipper from Australia, who was good. But I think the best one was who's the tight head for Wales? Real old school tight head.
Adam Jones?
Adam Jones, dude. Yes, Adam Jones. He's probably the best one I've gone against as a loose head. So real humble guy, man. Real down to earth. So but yeah, he's probably the best tight head I've gone against.
What makes
Um,
what makes Adam Jones
yeah.
stand out to you?
So I watched him a lot. Him, Martin Castro Giovanni, the older tight head for the last tight head for Italy. I just grew up watching those guys, and yeah, and then obviously Owen Franks and all those guys. But it was I don't know. It's just playing against him. I played against him in Philadelphia. It
Mm.
was USA versus Harlequins, and he was there, and no, I just felt like he was like real technical, like his the way he scrummed and then obviously seeing him play for the Lions and stuff. So it was sort of he was sort of like one of the major first props I've actually went up against. So I think that's why that event is such a like probably stands out the most for me. So he was like the first prop I actually like saw on TV, and then I'm actually facing right now. Like so that's probably what I meant like about. So he was kind of like the first big name to so. But yeah, technically he really put a job on too, because I didn't really understand like what he was trying to do to me. Now as an older prop, I'm like, okay, I understand, but I was younger. I was like, and he was just like kind of just bigger, like a bigger. He almost looks like Alex James. So I was like, oh, let me just get out. I'll just run around this guy. And then the set piece, he would just completely destroy us. And then he like got around pretty decent, you know. And I was just like, oh my god, bro, this guy's like deceptive, you know.
In a scrum, what is more important, aggression or technique?
I'd probably say technique, you know. Aggression is something that you naturally you have to bring, or else, you know, like if you're scrumming without aggression, that's like you're asking to get hurt, or you know, like so. I think technically, because there's so much technique like in the front row, and it's different between tight heads and loose heads, right? Like so, you know, tight heads has their job, and then loose heads has their job and their bind and the way they work their shoulder and neck, and so it's just I think yeah, I would say technical. Like
Mm,
technically, it's a lot difficult, you know, because there's a lot of I've gone I've scrummed against a lot of strong players in general. Like they could probably like scrum like 600 pounds or whatever, or squat 600 pounds, and like you know they're really big in the gym. You know, like they're strong. But then when we pack down, it's like that's when you can actually see the technique has a difference. You know, like
mm.
how you hit and how you chase, and then obviously scrums is it's a all eight thing, you know. So front rows can be decent and strong, but if you're not bringing the other eight with you, then it's you know it's collectively it's going to be a hard day in the office, you know. So yeah, you need all eight to like have a successful scrum, you know. Obviously front rowers we lead it, we're in the front, but yeah, it takes everyone, even to the flankers, to locks, and you know. So now with scrums, it's like the thing is like people are trying to like with rugby, they're trying to make it sort of like irrelevant. Like they're like, oh, like yeah, scrum. They're trying to change the scrum law, trying to speed it up. They're trying to change this and that. But like, it still doesn't change the fact that it's still a very important part of the game. Like you know, like you look at teams that have tried to go away from like having solid scrums and things like that. They're finding that's a lot difficult than they thought. You know, like 'cause you can't have a successful launching pad on your attack or anything if your set piece isn't stable, you know? And so you know, now with all the rules, like you can just see like people are trying to get rid of the scrums, trying to like speed up the game. But like I find that like if you have a decent set piece, like you can still do great in any comp, you know? Like regardless of how, you know, how things are, you still if you're playing 15, your set piece needs to be solid, you know. You can't have a mediocre set piece and then try to excel, you know, especially on the pro level. So
I I think it's such a mistake to try and go away from scrumming because I think that a
it
scrum
is.
sets rugby so far apart from anything else that you can watch
Yeah.
or be a part of. Just the idea that I'm gonna get my eight biggest dudes and your eight biggest dudes, and we're just gonna push against each other and see who's gonna come out as like the victor in that. That's so
It's a
primal.
it's a crazy thought, eh? Like when you think about it, you're just like, what? Like you talk about like brutal, yeah, primal situation. That's as primal as it gets. It's like one on one, like, and then as a prop, you see that face to face. You know, like this is the first time I can like physically. It's probably the only time where you go one on one with somebody, like 100%, like, and you can like actually take advantage of them, and like it does something to you psyche, like your psyche. You know, when you like lose a, you know, losing a scrum scrum is like the heartbeat. I feel like, and if you almost get like to lose a scrum penalty is like it's almost like your team. They almost like you can see it with the backs when the scrum's not doing well. Like you know, all the heads drop, and it's just like a rough day. You know, like and so like yeah, having set piece is very relevant, and to go away from it is very strange to me. But so it's a unique game in that sense, you know. So I mean, football has some sort of form of it, but I don't think it's as intense as what as rugby is, you know. Rugby is more of a tense form of it, you know, and seeing your guy face to face, no real pads, and you're just like in your head, you're just constantly like asking this guy questions, like, all right, just stop me here, stop me there. Uh, you got me here, give me next time. And so those are the things like you're constantly thinking throughout the game, especially with your opponent. So
I would love to see you and a couple other like props or type fives like showcase technique in scrums because as a
yeah,
fan, you can't see that kind of thing from
yeah,
the stands or from TV. And so like I would love to be able to we should do this when you get back here or whenever,
yeah,
but like set up some kind of like GoPros underneath you guys and like showcase like, oh, you're now putting pressure on this shoulder. I'm gonna, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I'm gonna push
yeah.
you this way and see if I can make you fall or yeah. I think that would be really
Yeah.
sweet.
No, and that's what I mean. Like I think that's something I find like I could probably add value with Rugby. It's just my my experience around set piece and like helping kids understand those lessons early, I learned the hard way, which is like playing club rugby, my first game at 18, and I go and I'm scrumming against a 40-year-old who like pushes my head through my spinal cord. And like I'm like, what the heck is this? And club rugby, they're like older, bitter guys that worked all week, and I'm like some fresh 18-year-old. They're probably mad at their boss. And they come and pack down against an 18-year-old. They just push my like head through my spine. I'm like angry like 40-year-old guy. Just and so that's like one of my first experience scrumming. And I'm like, I hate this feeling, like just getting crunched up, and I was just like, he's doing it all game, and so it actually forced me to learn. Like, man, I actually need to learn how to play this position because So no, it's good. It's good.
Because actually you played center growing up, from what I
Yeah, in high
understand.
school, yeah, I ran center. Yeah, and I learned quickly that yeah, you need certain skills that I was lacking and abilities. So yeah, I progressively started, making my way towards the front row.
I understand that your mother played a pretty significant role in your life,
Yeah,
and even
yeah.
your daughter's been named after her.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, can you share with me just how her influence shaped you, both as a person and as an athlete?
I mean, she's everything. So I was raised by a single mom. So she's like don't my dad left around 10, and so there was all of us. And so my mom just worked, and grind. And I think at the time I was a real troubled like youth kid, like real low low income family, like single parent, like real stereotypes, typical like, you know, um just single mom story. And so yeah, my mom did our best to just raise us right, and had a lot of big influences from my family. So I grew up around like a lot of my cousins, and just because my mom was always working. So stayed with them, lived with them. Then started playing sports, rugby. Always been around sports, but I think rugby was the first time my mom actually saw like a good influence that it had in my life, which is why I stuck with it. So and that was like the first experience where I felt like, oh, maybe there's something else I could be doing. Like that's a little bit more productive, a little bit more, and so yeah, rugby was it. And my mom always encouraged me to stick around rugby. Even so, like when now my mom, she passed away already. So she had liver cancer, so she passed away in 2013. And so yeah, but like even to her last words, she was like, just do what makes you happy, play rugby, whatever, keep chasing it. And so that's why if I do have a chance, I'll just keep playing it. And a lot of it is like a promise to my mom, but like but it's also changed who I am as a player, like just the sport in general. As a single parent kid, like there's a lot of emotion that go through you. You don't really regulate your emotions as well because you don't really have a dad, right? Who's there to check your emotions or like kind of like put put things in like perspective for you. And so I had to learn those lessons the hard way. Like my coaches were almost like my dad, right? Like so I looked at them. They're the first ones to actually give me hard lessons, like to teach me like, hey, this is like life. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then as a kid that was already in an environment that was like sort of tough, like they didn't realize like what they were teaching me, like how to pretty much like navigate without, And so having these influences in my life, I was just around good men, and they were like just telling me like, rugby, you're gonna fall down, but it's all about how you get up, and then you start to like adopt those things into your life. And as a kid growing up in like sort of a hard situation, I was um a lot of the situations that I felt in rugby, like I could understand it in real life. I was like, okay, I'm sort of in a pressure situation right now. Um, my mom can't make rent this week. That's pressure. Like those are real life pressures. Like playing sport was like it's not really. I mean, you got pressure, but that's not real pressure. Like and so like, but the thing is, sports helped me to like understand what I was feeling. Like or frustration, like how to manage your frustration, right? You can't just throw everything out of the don't react out of anger, right? You get yellow carded, red carded. You apply that into life, right? So I'm around a lot of guys that were like emotionally sensitive, like they're like always getting fights and stuff like that. And it will always remind me of those lessons I was learning in rugby.